Welcome to meeting number 37 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June 23, 2022. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. Pursuant to Standing Order 1064, the committee is meeting at the request of 4 members of the committee to discuss the request to undertake a study of women and girls in sport. I will now open the floor and suggest that the motion be read on the record. I know Andréane was going to read this, and I know that we have a second hand up. If anyone wants to put their hands up, myself and the clerk will be taking a speaking list if necessary. So go ahead, Andréane, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I will start by being transparent. I spent my childhood in gymnasiums. My sister is a gymnast and was until her early teenage years, so I understand the pressures that female athletes face. And my niece is also doing gymnastics like her mother, and she loves it. And I would hope that she will continue to enjoy it. I am also the aunt of Tyler, and I want Tyler to keep playing hockey safely. He's a young boy who is passionate about it. I also have an 8-month-old daughter, and I want her to be able to practice the sport of her choice safely. I saw the news last week like everyone else, and beyond Hockey Canada, and I participated in this with Sébastien Lemire, who's spokesperson for sports, and so I witnessed discussions with Hockey Canada. And Hockey Canada is one thing, but we've seen in the past weeks that it goes beyond Hockey Canada. There are women in different sports, water polo, gymnastics, and I could name many that are talking about about similar issues. This morning, I met with Madam Short and Mr. Collar, who told us how this is now a status of women issue. There needs to be an in-depth study on the causes as to why there are still so many issues in changing the culture in sports. And that is why we have this bill. There's physical abuse, but also psychological and emotional abuse. And that is why I tabled the following motion last week, that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee immediately undertake a study on sport and the status of women, including the physical and emotional health and safety of women and girls in sport. That the committee allocate 4 meetings to hear testimonies, and that it invite to testify Ms. Pascale Saint-Onge, Minister of Sport, and other witnesses that the committee deems appropriate to invite. That the committee report its observations and recommendations to the House. And I would like to thank the committee for hearing this motion. And again, I saw the work that was done at the Heritage Committee, and it was done in a non-partisan way. All committees were there to focus on one issue. And now we need to go beyond hockey and help women and girls in other sports. They're waiting for us to lead by example, and that we know that sports are a good source of positivity for girls. It helps them stay in school. And so let us focus as a Status of Women committee on this. Let us lead by example and show that we can work in a non-partisan way and be as proactive as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenna, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Adrienne, for bringing this forward and for sharing your rationale for bringing it forward. I think it's certainly an important and a topical issue in our country right now, and certainly do support us exploring it. I do have an amendment I'd like to suggest, and I'll explain my rationale before I read it. The first is to ask that we first finish our mental health study. And I ask that in that we're almost there. So, I think it would be worthwhile to finish that off. We have the ministers scheduled to come provide their testimony shortly. And I think it would be, wise of us to get that study finished as well, which we all know is a really important issue. And then secondly, I would suggest rather than just reporting back observations and recommendations to the House, that we actually table a comprehensive report. I think it's certainly a topic that is deserving of it, and so I would suggest we go to that extent.
Okay, so the amendment specifically is, do we need an amendment, or is this not a formal amendment, or can we just start having this discussion? There are two amendments on here. Okay.
Yeah, technically, because
yeah,
I'm
so we can
adding-
only do one amendment at the time. Okay.
So I can read the first one if
So
that's helpful.
if you could read the first amendment, and just reminders to the committee, when we go into an amendment after the initial motion is brought forward, the debate will be on the amendment. Once we have decided on that, we'll go back to the original motion with amended amendments. Go ahead, Jenna.
Okay, so I'll do the first one first then, which would be, so that pursuant to Standing Order 108.2, the committee undertake a study following the completion of witnesses on the mental health of young women and girls, on sport and the status of women, including physical, emotional, etc. The rest is the same. So just specifying that we finish our witnesses first.
Okay. Fantastic. So I've got a speaking list. Michelle, followed by Leah, but I'm going to take the floor. Sorry, guys. Chair's prerogative here. Just to give you an idea, on Thursday, the meeting will be cancelled. That is going to be our fall economic statement. We just, during committee, have been advised of that. When we return, that will be the 14th of November, in which we have our last panel. We have both Minister Ian and Minister Bennett for the mental health study, and that is our last panel. So the following time, I think, is the 17th. I'm just going off. I've been working on a lot this week, and let me just say, so I think it's the 17th, which would be basically the first day that we could really, really start. That would put on hold the reports and doing version 1 of our murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls study, which of course we know is very, very important, but we'll work with Leah on that. And then our mental health study, those versions as well. But we'd be able to do this while the versions are being done and go from there. So I just want to put out the time frame there for everybody. And Jenna, thanks very much, but there's only one panel remaining, and that's the minister. So I just want to bring everybody that information as we carry on. Michelle, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think, I think what's important to point out is that everybody in this committee cares about all of these issues. Like, we have a bunch of fires burning right now, and it's how do you decide which one to put out first? And I think it's a really big struggle. It's what I said earlier to the witnesses testifying. This is such a challenge because we have so many things, and I know everybody must feel this way. You want to help everything and everyone at the same time. Andrianne's motion came forward, and I really, it is pertinent, as is other things, but to MP Sudd's amendment recommendation, I think this actually deeply overlaps with youth mental health. I actually think they are so intertwined, because if you are not safe in sport, which is supposed to be a safe space for many children who are in abusive homes or are in traumatic homes or are possibly in Indigenous homes, sport is supposed to be this place of where you can get away and you can escape and be safe. And so if that is not safe, and the bar for normal is abuse, we have a massive problem. So, this is unearthing a lot of wounds for a lot of people. I spoke with a gymnast yesterday, and I had interviewed her when she was 9 years old, and she was on trajectory to go to the Olympics. And I said, I'm really curious what you think about this motion being brought forward to status of women. And she said something really powerful that I think we all need to appreciate. And she said, Michelle, it's like I've just been catapulted to my 9-year-old self, and you've opened up a big wound that I had thought I dealt with, but I hadn't. And so I think what you're going to see, and to Andrian's point, because this is coming out in the news, it's a Me Too movement of sport in a lot of ways for a lot of people. And I think it is our duty in this committee to investigate it. So, I mean, I want to work with everybody to ensure we're doing the best job we can to ensure safety. But I would definitely say to MP Sudd's point, this absolutely is youth mental health. And if we only have one more meeting anyway, I think it's a matter of doing this. So I think it's a great motion that you've brought forward, Andrian, and it's extremely, extremely important.
Okay, so the speakers list starts with Dominique, followed by Leah, followed by Sonia. Dominique, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Hello, colleagues. I'm eager to see you in person. I like Andrian's proposal. But what scares me, or what concerns me with how it is formulated, is that it is very vast. And I'm worried I don't have any amendments. I just wanted to share my concerns. What I would like to see with the work that we could do would be to review things that we had heard and seen in the media, things that have been brought to our attention as Canadians. But we could also focus on the state of things for sports federations, sports teams, and my son was in hockey and my nieces are in other sports. So what exists currently to protect athletes in federations? So that was something that we would like to see. And then best practices as well. I think that's what we need to focus on. But that said, I haven't prepared any written amendments.
And interrupt, because I'm going to remind everybody we have to go back to the amendment. So, Dominique, I really do appreciate everything you have on the record, but we need to look at the amendment. Oh, you're awesome. But what we really need to look at is, do we have agreement with everybody that we are looking at the ministers coming on that day and then immediately start? I guess part of the thing is, and perhaps this is where the clerk can clarify, and we'll get back to everybody. We are finishing off this mental health study with this, but we also want to make sure that we can speak to the minister on this as well. And I think that's one of the things. If we're having the minister on the 14th, Minister Ian, would we be able to invite her back, or do we want to? Because I think that's one of the things too, is she may be one of the witnesses we want to speak to. Could we be able to use some of stick to the mental health study only, or could we expand a little on our conversation to talk about sport with her on that Monday? It does go hand in hand, and it's really up to us. You know, I'm kind of looking at the group here, and I just want to say, I think we all would be in agreement just to let the ministers come regardless. That's the right thing to do on the 14th. Adrian, I'll get back to you, but I'm just kind of putting that out there, saying this is where I think this conversation's leading to. I'm going to have Leah followed by Sonia, and then go back to Adrian. Let's get part one figured out, and then let's go to part two. Go ahead,
I
Leah.
just want to be perfectly clear. So we only have one for the mental health study.
One panel left.
So I actually, first I want to thank you, Adrian, for putting this forward. And one of the reasons I've really enjoyed being on this committee is because we're talking about this as a nonpartisan study with the sport, but I think we've handled all studies like that on this committee, particularly because of the fact that we specifically focus on women and girls and diverse gendered, and that's a topic that needs more discussion throughout the House. So I've been very pleased and always happy to be on this committee. I also think that the study that Adrian has put forward is extremely important, which is why I signed on to it. And I think that there is, everybody on this committee agrees that this study is really important. I think it's too important to overlap. I think we have one meeting left on mental health. I think that I agree that we need to finish that one meeting on mental health. And I think, I support that amendment that's being proposed. And I think we need a really comprehensive study on this because, as we've seen in the news, and we've heard for many years, there's this Hockey Canada investigation right now, a critical one. But as we've heard on the news, you brought up in gymnastics, this has been in the news forever, and it requires a real study, real investigation, a thoughtful time allocation so that we can really get to the bottom of this. I also think as we talk about in the House of Commons, we are in a mental health crisis right now in this country. And we need this study finished so that we can give information to people across Canada that can help support their work they're doing. One of the things that was brought up was my study that I had put forward to committee on, the relationship between resource development and increased incidents of violence against Indigenous women and girls. I would also say that is a crisis of safety. We know that this was put forward as a concern in the national inquiry, and we actually in that study were heeding one of the calls for justice from the national inquiry, which is really important. In saying that, what I propose in that, since we were talking about time, is that we finish the study on mental health, the one meeting. We start the study on sport, given the fact that there is public interest and public concern, and I think there's moments in history where you have to respond to public concern. But I've also, just to as a reminder to this committee, I also have postponed my study. Now this will be twice. And here's what I have to say about that. Indigenous peoples in this country, as a House, we recognized what happened in residential schools in a unanimous consent as genocide. And I am willing, because I am thoroughly committed always to addressing violence for all people, women, girls, diverse, gendered. But I need specific timelines. Our women cannot always be treated like a second thought. And so I think we need to balance this. And like I've said, if I didn't think this study wasn't a critical one, I would have not signed on to it without thought. But I think we also have to have that thought in terms of mental health, in terms of, the increased violence in sport, but also for the fact that there is epidemic levels of violence against Indigenous women and girls in communities. So I'm just going to put that on the table, but I do support that amendment. Thank you.
Sonia, I'm going to go to you, and then I'll make some comments after that. Sonia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support the amendment, Jenna proposed that. And I totally agree with Leah. We have been working together very well and collaboratively. We completed our IPV report, resource development study, and we are about to wrap our mental health study. I know we all want to see greater representation of women and girls in support at all levels. It is true that Canadian women and girls continue to face barriers, and full participation and representation in Canadian sports system. We all want that. So every study we are doing, the good study, because we do care about that. Sorry. So on the amendment, I agree with when you said 17th is the begin the study is the best approach. It gives us the time that party needs to submit the witnesses list and then clerk to send those invitations. But again, I support this amendment. And with that, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks very much. If you don't mind, I'll take this directly to a vote. All those in favor of supporting the amendment to begin this study after the last panel of mental health witnesses are seen. We'll just do it informally. All those in favor? Fantastic. So Amendment 1 passes that we will be starting the study after the panel with the ministers. Let's go to Amendment 2, and once you do that, then we'll start the conversation again.
Okay, so as mentioned, Amendment 2 keeps the consistent wording, but adds at the end, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the government table a comprehensive response to the report.
Government's response, just
Yes.
not a letter, not just saying, thanks very much, we've
Right.
received it.
Comprehensive
We want to see
response.
something.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Conversation from that. I know Adrienne had her hand, and then back to Michelle.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We all voted to agree to finish with the last panel. That's done. And I just wanted to say that I agreed with that. And if I understood correctly, we would be starting on the 24th of November. Apologies. The 17th, correct? Perfect. So we would be starting on the 17th. That is good. That's just, I wanted clarification there. And I agree that after that decision, we could move back to the study. We need to examine the report, of course, on Leah's study. We'd have to see what the impact would be on our calendar. Could we have some information on that?
Absolutely. We can. I've got the calendar, and we'll reschedule and look at the calendar, of course. With the calendar, what we were going to be doing was version 1 of the Indigenous study. That was what we were focusing on. Our human trafficking and sexual exploitation study, the witnesses were due on Friday. And so that one will just be delayed. It will be delaying starting our 4th study. And then the mental health study, usually these guys are 3 to 4 weeks on getting a study. Then we get to that translation. So those would be some of those things. But we will make sure that everything we do is very transparent. Any things that we can find out from translation, from whatever we may do, we'll make sure that everybody is advised and a new calendar would be available. My only question for you is when we're talking about comprehensive, we had talked about 4 meetings, and I know that there was discussions on that. Michelle, I'm going to pass the floor, and then I see Anita.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. That's my question, actually. So with a comprehensive study, just because it would be bigger, I support the amendment of a comprehensive study. I think it makes way more sense to do something properly. So I just am curious, do we still keep 4? Like, is that enough? That's what I'm at. That's what I'm just asking for. Or do we have to put that into the amendment? I'm not sure.
Okay, so what I would like to do right now is what we're looking at, and I'm just having a quick chat with the clerk here. We're basically looking at the wording at the bottom of what Ms. Suds has indicated, what Jen has indicated, and this is something that would be simple to vote on, that we're just saying to the government, we want more than just a response. We want an actual, something bigger. So we could look at that, and then we can start going, I opened the can of worms before I should have. So what I would like to do is see if everybody is in support of Jenna's amendment for an actual comprehensive response. All those in favor of the government with a comprehensive response? Happy, joyful, we're moving forward. Got it. Okay, so now we're looking at going back to Michelle, because this is where our 4 meetings going to be enough. We could probably do 1 sport in 4 meetings, unfortunately. But we have to look at what is it that we want to accomplish. Does 4 meetings, I think 4 meetings will open the can, and where do we do from there? So perhaps there should be a bigger discussion on that. Michelle, followed by Anita.
I mean, I think if we're sticking with the 4 meetings in taking into consideration what Leah has commented on, to not sort of push back again her study, that would be my concern, right? So can we effectively sort of do this in 4 meetings? Can we really hunker down and be really, really concrete so that we're not pushing Leah's motion further back? Because I think she's shown incredible grace in what she said today, because it is absolutely important that we also study that fire burning as well. So that would be my suggestion. As a woman and as a mom, I feel confident that when you give us a really hard task, we can do it. But yeah, just, I think we have to be really, really concrete in who we're going to have as witnesses if we're only going to have 4 meetings. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm now going to go to Anita, followed by Leah, followed by Adrian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think we've been very good in this committee of not being too prescriptive. If we see by the third meeting that we need, I think that the committee can probably gauge that. I've seen some really good reports come out of 4 meetings or less, in fact. So I think we should give the chair a little bit of leeway in that, also depending how many witnesses are proposed. But the thing I wanted to also say is that if we could give the chair some leeway with the calendar in terms of if Leah's study, if the study on Indigenous women and resource extraction is ready and the analysts have finished it, that perhaps the chair could schedule in a meeting in between somewhere so that we can approve that study and get it out. It's something that probably important to get out before the end of before the holiday season. So I think we can all agree that we don't need to have a motion around this, but just give the chair a little bit of latitude in these regards.
I will do my best, Miss Anita. I will do my best. Okay. Oh, good. Okay. I'm going to go to Leah, and then you can propose me anything you want. Okay. So go ahead.
I'll defer my time to Adrienne first, and then I'll leave my comments till after.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we all agreed to start the study on the 17th, but what I propose would be a meeting to examine the report. We would have 1 or 2 meetings, so we can start the study on sports and alternate. So have 2 meetings on sports, and we can examine if we need to extend the study, but then we could also reserve a meeting to examine Leah's study and then come back to the study on sports. And we could foresee that after the first 2 meetings on sports, we can take the time to see if we need more than 4 meetings, and we'd come back to Leah's study and examine the possibility of extending the sports study after that.
So getting back to my point about how fabulous our committee is, just, role models for the House of Commons. But no, I think that's a very gracious compromise. I think both issues are quite urgent, and I think I would feel very happy to have the 2 meetings, as Adrienne suggested, reserve 1 meeting for us to finalize the report. And then I also think that will give us more time to put witnesses forward and really think about it, because it's coming kind of it's just kind of come about, and it'll give us more time to be thoughtful about witnesses.
Absolutely appreciate that. Thank you very much. So I don't have anybody else left on the speakers list. So what it looks like from what we've agreed on is that we would start the study following the mental health study. Witnesses, we will start the study, have a couple, figure out where the heck we are, what we need to do, and then we'll revert and start looking at this study that we can go through version 1 and continue to work. We can do both of them, and this isn't a problem. We have the best staff ever, so that's something that's very, very possible. And I do think that I can tell you from the weekend and things like that, that I know that there is lots and lots of interest. Jenna, go ahead.
Amazing, and love the compromise and the teamwork here. I just want to flag, I don't, thinking about as we start to put together our witness list and who we will have as witnesses on this study, that I do think, we reflect on whether some trauma-informed training is necessary.
Actually, So I already started that conversation because we were doing the human trafficking one, and I wanted to make sure that everybody was empowered. So I'm going to pass that over to Claire, because this is her job.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so if the committee wishes, Dominique and I have been working with the clerk to think about some ways that the committee could have a meeting or a session on trauma-informed questioning of witnesses, but also on ways in which the people in the room, the members themselves, might seek help and just kind of getting through these tougher studies. So we're looking at it from both of those angles. If the committee is looking for that kind of information, we can definitely draw together some experts and bring them in, and a briefing note and everything will be prepared as well. So it's up to the committee and the chair, but.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have our clerk read out the final motion, and we just need approval of that. Go ahead, clerk.
Donc, la motion telle qu'amendée,
So the motion as amended, that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study on sport after the Committee on the Mental Health of Women and Girls, including the physical and emotional health of and safety of women and girls in sport, that the committee allocate 4 meetings to hear testimonies, and that it invite to testify Ms. Pascale Saint-Onge, Minister of Sport, for 1 hour, and other witnesses that the committee deems appropriate to invite, that the committee report its observations and recommendations to the House, and that, pursuant to Standing Order 109, that the government table a comprehensive response to the report.
Dominique, is this a question before our vote? Because I was just about to vote. You have a question on this, Dominique? Or a comment?
I don't have a question, but rather a comment before the end of the meeting.
Okay, fantastic. So what we'll do is go to the vote of the motion. All those in favor of supporting this study? All those in favor? Looks unanimous. Okay, it is unanimous. And November 4th, Friday at noon, witness list. Yeah, oh golly gee, you're crazy. We got to get on this. So I am already getting some saying, we need to get these witnesses in. So she is asking for our first group of witnesses to start throwing in these things on November 4th. Go ahead. I know you have a comment, and then to Dominique. Go ahead, Anita.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I have a motion. One of the things we just did in the Subcommittee on International Human Rights is that it is possible for a particular study for the committee members to make available the Employee Assistance Program on a one-time basis for witnesses and members. I guess members have it anyway, but we can make it available to the witnesses in a particular study. So I would move that we do so for this study.
So this is so that we can ensure that everybody has the supports that they need while we're doing this study and extending those services out to the witnesses and employees, witnesses, not just us here at the House of Commons. Do we need any more discussion on that? All those in favor? Easy passy. Okay, go ahead, Dominique. Oh, Dominique and Adrian.
Karen,
Thank you, Karen. Sorry, I was hearing a bit of an echo. This might be a special request for Claire and her team. In the briefing note that you prepared, in order to stop us from wasting important minutes, would it be possible to ask for a review of what protections exist to protect athletes in federations? Are there protocols or policies? And how all of that is implemented on a daily basis, the application of these policies, the implementation of these policies. So if we could have that in the briefing note and have an idea of what's happening in Canada, that would be very useful. Thank you.
What we're going to be asking for is all witness lists, if you can have them in by Friday for witness lists. Of course, as the study's going, we also know that there may be other things. So like everything, we will be flexible. We want to make sure we get the best study possible. Seeing no further questions or comments, asking for a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Meeting adjourned. Perfect.